So the Acolyte, we've talked about it the past couple episodes here on Flicker Effect, and let's keep going with it. Episode 4 dropped last night, and episode 4 of 8, as we love. And this show has, as we've discussed in the past, maybe this is your first time here, but if you weren't aware, it has got people talking, and it's got people divided, and people throwing things at each other. And as Bobby and I discussed on the last episode, I think we both agreed where I know I was saying how there's been things about this show that has made me as a Star Wars fan question if I want to be around these other fans. And it's been tough. And it's gotten, even since then, but before episode 4 aired, there's been things like out there that have just made me go, don't lump me in with the rest of you, because there's been stuff that's like, yes, Star Wars fans are unanimously standing against Disney now because of this show. It's finally united Star Wars fans, and I'm like, you guys, no, stop. Like, and that I saw some of that, and that was just making me so angry. And it's been an interesting ride, but episode 4 aired last night. I'd love to chat with you guys about it. And I guess, as we talked about earlier, I guess I'll go first on this one.
Should we explain that, so far you've been good with Acolyte. You and Bobby seem to be pretty happy with it.
So far I've been I'll speak for myself first. I've been pretty happy with the show. Bobby and I definitely aired concerns we had last week. And I mean, as we've already insinuated very quickly right now, that we're still getting very short episodes that could be developed a lot more than they're being. And it's frustrating that we're getting a show still that's like these 30 to 40 minute episodes that feel like there should be more, and there's not. But beyond that, overall, I have been enjoying it. And Bobby, I think you're basically in the same boat. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. Definitely been feeling pretty solid in terms of what we've gotten so far. In terms of the first few episodes, I just felt like, okay, this was something that I wanted to see. They're taking a different take. They're doing something that isn't akin to what we've been seeing before. It's away from the Skywalkers. It's a different era. There's more of a mystery to this kind of way this show is set up, and this is just unfamiliar territory. And so for me, it was kind of like, oh, okay. It still felt like Star Wars to me too, because we're getting all these different aliens, and obviously there's Jedi. So to me, I was like, all right, yeah, we're on board. And I do have issues with the show, but overall, I was still feeling like, okay, this is solid. So let's see how it goes as the rest of the season develops.
But Michelle, to catch everyone up, how have you been feeling about the Acolyte?
I do not hate the Acolyte. Let me be very clear. But I do have issues with the Acolyte. A lot, as a production, I have some issues. That's where most of my issues lie. But my issues definitely are not in this one, this category of what are apparently Star Wars fans. So I've been told that they are. The hatred that is coming out of that wing, I'm not there. That is not me either. So I'm not loving the show. I'm not hating the show, and I'm not hating Star Wars. I do have issues with some things that Disney has done with Star Wars as a whole. But the Acolyte has me. There's things I like, there's things I don't like. I've basically kind of been waiting for episode 4 to kind of really develop more thoughts on it. So I don't want to say like I'm on the fence. It's not like I'm on the fence. It's fine. The Acolyte is fine.
All right.
That's where I'm at. At least,
You're in the Acolyte is fine camp.
I'm in the Acolyte is fine. It's fine. There have been worse Star Wars shows. And there have been better Star Wars shows.
Well, as for my thoughts, I guess, on episode 4, I'll begin since you guys have been starting on the last stuff we've been talking about. I watched the episode last night. and I will say I think it's my least favorite so far. Uh, and it's for me, it really felt like the reason for that is mostly about the pacing of a short episode, of an episode that is way too short. And this was the perfect example for me of like the Acolyte not. I mean, again, we've said this before. You can make 30-minute episodes, have a show that has 30-minute episodes, and they feel like a fleshed out good episode. It can be done. But this isn't doing it for me so far. Or at least this episode 4 was the worst example of it. Like this episode ended not just because the episode ends, and again, we're talking spoilers, not just because the episode ends on a major cliffhanger, but as the episode progressed in the middle of it, it felt like we were just moving maybe a little too fast. And things like, for instance, there's a scene with May, and I forget the character's name that she's kind of tagging along with, that's been helping her. I can't remember. I'll probably pull it up here in a second and remember. But yeah, Chimere or Chimere. Yeah, I guess it is Chimere. And like very quickly she goes from, all right, I'm going to find this Jedi and kill him, and like then there's a scene of her kind of questioning what's going on, and then boom, she's changed her mind. And then it's the scene where she like suddenly like catches him in a trap, and like she's decided, hey, I'm not going to kill Jedi anymore because my sister's alive, and why am I doing this? And there was nothing about that character development there. There was no character development there for me. It was just like, boom, she's changed her mind. And I'm just like, what? like there could have been some more there for me. And that was just a perfect example of a lot of that in this show. And then, yeah, the show ends on a major cliffhanger. And it's one thing to have shows end on cliffhangers. I'm all for that. But it's just like, it was a little too much for me. Like, no, like the show should not have ended here. Like, what are we doing? Like, this really felt like half one of a hour long episode, and you decided to split it into two. I know that's not how this probably played out, but that's how it felt. And it really bugged me. And it was exciting, the end of the episode. I'm like, all right, here's the guy, and let's do this. And then boom, it's over. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now? Like, this is over? I mean, and what happens to, and again, forgive me for being terrible on character names today on our show, but the Wookiee Jedi, I mean, I get in terms of the way the story plays out, like why we didn't see him killed on screen. It was an off-screen event, but still, it was like we see the shot of him slashed across the chest, and I'm like, are you kidding me? like, man, I wanted to see this guy in action. Like, I mean, I get that we might get some flashbacks. I know that we might see more of him in some way, shape, or form, but now technically he's dead, and I'm like, oh man, like, you guys keep killing the Jedi. Like, I get that he was kind of on the lip. Yeah, like I was really bummed about that, and like overall though, there was beats and things about the story I was cool with and enjoyed. I mean, like at times, even though this show wasn't filmed on the volume, or at least it wasn't filmed on the volume for the most part, I keep hearing separate things on that. But, you got these nice big wide shots on the planet that they're on, and that's kind of nice to see. And you've got this character that they're using as like I don't know what that creature is that they're using as a tracker. That's the word I was trying to think of. And I mean, he was cool. I'm fine with that. Another little interesting Star Wars character.
Is his name Benji?
I don't remember. Was it?
That's something like that.
Basil.
Is it Basil?
Basil. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, I like that character. That was cool. But overall, I was just like, man, this just kind of moved along way too fast. And like, what are we doing here? Basically everything Bobby and I said last week on the episode of like, well, Lucasfilm, what are we doing here? Like, what? Overall, you have like the makings of a good story here. Why are we making it into what feels like totally, it's not totally like a kid's show. I guess that's not fair to put it that way, but there could be more. and it bums me out. And there's that there's gonna be a lot more meat, and but there's interesting things as well. And there is an appearance of a Jedi in this episode that immediately I was like, wait a second, what is he doing here? I mean, but if anything, I actually take somewhat relief that he's in this episode because it makes me think that there has been thought put into what we're either changing or how we're going to handle the fact that there seems to be Sith around, and yet in Phantom Menace there was talk of Sith haven't been around in a millennia, and we'll get to that. But I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on the episode first.
Okay.
That's my
Uh,
thoughts.
yeah, I mean, I would say I'd echo pretty much everything you said. One of my bigger takeaways from the episode was just how lavish the sets were in terms of shooting on location for some of that stuff where they were on the planet. And I thought that was really nice just to have that kind of aspect of the show, showing that okay, some this money is going somewhere. They're doing some things with it, and even some of the different conversations that were going on, I found interesting, and like seeing with one part with I think her name is Jackie or something like that, with her and Osha, and talking about how she didn't feel like she was a true Jedi, and that you're not defined by some. I can't. I'll mess it up, but she was saying something along the lines of you're not defined by the mistakes you made, but how you're able to keep going after it, or something to that effect. And I thought that was nice that they have a nice little bond between the two of them that kind of didn't even seem like it was one, but it feels pretty natural at the same time. And I too, um, it's funny, David. You mentioned bumping up against the change of heart in which she had, and I guess I didn't necessarily bump up against that so much, only because I thought about while I don't know that it was handled as well as it could have been. To me, it just felt like it was something where she was on a mission to hunt down these Jedi that she felt was responsible for her mother's dying, these witches, the other witches, and her sister, because she believed her sister to be dead. So then when she finds out that her sister is alive, it felt like to me between the ship ride there and the walk in the forest, she just really came to that realization is like, well, what am I even doing anymore? Like, why do I need to go hunt these Jedi? If I was doing this to avenge my sister and she's actually alive, now I don't have to do that. And so to me, it kind of felt like that was sort of like a realization of that. It kind of just sort of hit her in the sense that she had new information introduced into her. And so she kind of chewed over it and then came to that realization. But I still think it was maybe handled a little clunky in the way that it's presented to us on screen. But my the problem I had more so with it is one that I can't help but to hear in my head since somebody mentioned it at one point is that in Star Wars we have so many characters that start off bad but then turn good, and that does tend to happen quite a bit if you think about all the different Star Wars stories we've had throughout the years in live action and even in animated, where these characters start off bad and then they become good at the end. Starts with Darth Vader, if you could really say the number one character that starts off bad and goes good. But only character I can think of, and there's probably more, but one of the only few characters I can think of that didn't eventually turn good is Palpatine. I mean, he's just bad through and through. But that does seem to be a running theme where they don't want to keep characters just as being bad. But outside of that, and going on through some of the other aspects of the episode, a couple things kind of bothered me, and one being the way it ended. I agree with you that it was not done well, and this was one of the only times I really felt like I didn't know the show was going to end when it ended. Most of the time I know and I can feel when it's coming up on an ending and how it's about to end. But this one, it felt so abrupt in a way that I have never experienced with the show before. That as soon as the entity, I don't know what to call that person yet because I don't know that
Stranger.
it's a Sith,
Yeah.
but the stranger, well, most people are calling it the Sith, but I don't know that it's a Sith yet because that's a very distinct title to have, and you're titled that by a certain set of circumstances. So for me, it's an evil being that person was there, knocks all the Jedi back, and then it cuts like immediately, and it was just so weird that it cut so quickly, not even like a beat after that you get to see, and so it felt odd in the way that it ended. And then there was another scene earlier in the episode that I had to rewind it at least 3 or 4 times to rewatch it to think if am I crazy? Is this a weird cut? And no one else has mentioned it, so I feel like maybe I'm just crazy. But when they first arrive on the planet, Jackie is talking to one of the local alien characters, and she asked him a question, and he's like roaring his answer, but in the middle of his roar it just cuts the scene to I think it's Osha and uh Yodo, I forget the other guy's name, um but to those two characters, and I was like, that is an odd cut because it was like right in the middle of the voice, and the voice cuts out completely and it switches, and I was like, is that supposed to be that way? Am I just like imagining that that's the way it's supposed to be, and I'm the one going and tripping off of it? But I still thought it was a weird cut, and there was just elements within the episode that it just felt very lackluster in this episode, where there's a few interesting things, but I think it's offset by more things that were just kind of like throwing me off than in the previous few episodes, where there was things that threw me off, but there was more interesting things that overtook the things that were throwing me off. So this episode, it completely flipped for me. There was more negative stuff to me that I saw within this episode than I thought there was the good stuff, because there definitely was some good stuff in there, and I liked and appreciated. And I was like, I wish we had more of that in a longer episode to explore some of these things, but no, because of the runtime and being so short, we don't get a lot of that. So I pretty much, like I said, felt the same way about you, or I felt the same way you did about this episode in terms of, not really feeling it in terms of comparing it to the other episodes. This would be my least favorite of the bunch that we've gotten so far.
Michelle. No, like as you said, its show hasn't been terrible for you, but hasn't been great. It's kind of middle of the road. Not loving it. I mean, and then I think you should note, like, even last night, you seemed kind of like, do I want to watch it or not? Like, that's kind of where you've been with the show. But with that in mind, what did you think of episode 4? You did eventually watch it, so what did you think?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, even last night, I was kind of like, I don't feel pressed to watch the show. Like, I would say of the 4 episodes, I think the 3rd episode was the strongest. That's not saying a lot, but
You're going to flip a lot of people out.
I know. Again, do not throw me in the camp of the Star Wars fanboys that are hating on Star Wars right now, because that's not the camp I'm in. So while I'm not enjoying the show as much, I'm not in that camp. I think those guys are psychos. Yeah, I think this one is definitely the weakest link for sure. To be very clear, and so much has to do with the production of the shows as a whole, and a lot of that is the whole Disney situation. None of these shows need to be under 30 minutes. That's just it's ridiculous. Like, this isn't Clone Wars. This isn't an animated show. This is a live action show, and you have a budget and you have the time to give us fully fleshed out episodes that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then also a slight cliffhanger to catch us on for the next episode. And these little episodes are not doing that. They're not capturing my interest or my intrigue enough to make me go, wow, I feel like we had a question we started with and we got to a point and we got that question answered and we felt resolved, but then another question came in. No, none of these episodes have done that for me. I have not cared deeply about these characters yet. Still. I mean, I was kind of interested in the whole Wookiee Jedi, but that poor dude, I mean, justice for that guy. Hashtag justice for Jedi. What's his name? Like, that, I'm with David. That was not dignified. Like, I want to see that dude in action. And that was just sadness. No, the show completely ends abruptly. The episode does. And I'm okay with cliffhangers. That's not the way to do a cliffhanger. That doesn't work. If anything, it probably should have ended about 20 seconds before it did. If they really wanted it to at least end on a better cliffhanger note. But overall, no, this episode was not good. I have to agree with David. I think too many of these characters are coming to a change of idea, thought, feeling, process / this is my path. They're coming to these conclusions. They're going from 0 to 10. They just skip through the other 9 numbers. Like they're just jumping right into, oh no, I'm changing my mind. Boom. It's like, well, I understand what Bobby was saying. Like I understand that she changed her mind because she realizes her sister's alive, because she feels like she was just doing this for her sister, for revenge, and now she doesn't have to have this revenge situation. But they didn't flesh that out very well. It was just not done well. I just don't think the effort to make these shows bulky and meaty and meaningful and character driven and really interesting, it's not there. Like, it's just, to me, it's just not. I will say the one thing they had this going, which you guys have already brought up, is the sets. I think they're doing a really good job with set design. Unfortunately, though, I think their cinematography is pretty lackluster and flat. And that's kind of been depressing for Star Wars, in my opinion. In this episode, maybe it was a little bit better, but the other 3 episodes, I think it was just coming up really short, especially the first 2 episodes. No, I don't think the Acolyte is going very well, in my opinion. And I think the actual script itself just, it's like, I almost wish I could like read the script and just read the script, because I think if I just read it without any, and I think these actors they're working hard. They're working so hard to try to make it good. Bless them all, because the writing's just not good. It's not. Like, the storyline is already kind of sing-songy and not super amazing, and hopefully they'll pull it together in the next 4 episodes. But I'm not banking on it. But the actual script itself, the dialogue, is just atrocious. I'm sorry. It just is. Like, it's just not working for me. And it's kind of sad to see, because I was kind of excited for the idea of something new and fresh for Star Wars. Something that is not Skywalker Saga. Like, I was down for it. Like, I love new beings, new creatures, new aliens. I hate saying that word for Star Wars. It just feels weird. But, like, I enjoy that. I enjoy experiencing new worlds and, like, what they feel like, what they look like. I enjoy being enveloped in that. And thus far, it's just not doing it for me, the Acolyte.
Are you going to keep watching? Or are you like...
I don't know.
I mean, knowing how you were even about episode 4, that's why I ask. And I'm just
I'll put it this way. Like, I'm not, like, putting aside, like, other things to watch it. Like, this isn't, like, must-see TV for me.
Well, I will say it doesn't take up much time. You can watch an episode really fast.
On the upside, it doesn't. I was going to say, like, I wound up being able to pump out this episode without any real, like, hiccup to my day-to-day. So, the, like, must watch it the night that it airs doesn't really affect me in any way, shape, or form thus far.
Right.
Like, No. And then there was something else Bobby was saying that, like, oh, I wish I could think. I'm trying to remember what you just said, Bobby. And there was something you said. I was like, and it wasn't like I disagreed or agreed with you. It was like I wanted to expound upon that thought process, and now I can't think of it. Yeah, no. I wish this show were. I wish it were better. I really do. I wish it were better. Now, is it as horrible as like Book of Boba Fett or Obi-Wan or season 3 of The Mandalorian? No, but it's not great, and it's hard to make this must-watch TV when I have so many other shows that are putting forth so much more effort with smaller budgets. It's just like that's kind of sad to me. So, yeah, the Acolyte is whatever at this point for me.
I'll get to it when I get to a TV.
I get to it. It'll happen. Mm-hmm. It's cool.
Yeah, I wish you could remember what it was Bobby was saying that you wanted to expound upon. But
yeah, it'll come to me later as soon as we get off the air.
Yeah, as soon as we go.
As soon as we go, I'll be like, oh yeah. So the Jedi.
What about him?
There was a Jedi that showed up that you got excited for.
I wouldn't say I got excited for. I was
Okay,
confused by in a lot of ways. I mean, before, when we were talking about the trailers for the show, before the show even aired, and I mean, it wasn't just us. A lot of fans were going, wait, so how's the show going to work? Like, a certain Jedi in Phantom Menace at the Jedi Council talks about how I don't know the exact line, but he says, like, that's impossible. The Sith have been extinct for over a millennia. And then that Jedi appears in this episode. And Iki Mundi, I think is how you say his name. In Phantom Menace, he's got this tall, long kind of head. And in Phantom Menace, his
like a cone head kind of thing.
Kind of like a cone head, yeah. And
okay.
And in Phantom Menace, all of his facial hair is gray, but in this, he definitely looks a little younger. He's got like a brown kind of goatee-ish kind of beard thing. No gray hair yet, really. And at first I was like, wait, is that him? Or is that just like the same race? And I didn't notice it during the credits because I wasn't looking for it. But indeed, the credits of the show confirm it is him.
So he's 500 years old?
I mean, it's a race that I guess lives long. I don't know how old he is. I mean, this is 100 years before Phantom Menace. So,
okay, well,
he could be maybe 150, 200 years old. Who knows? By the time Phantom Menace rolls around, I mean. But anyway, so he shows up, and that's an interesting choice. And I find it interesting because, I was definitely one of those people going, I'm skeptical about how this show is going to pull off what apparently are Sith. And I say that because, I mean, I believe the showrunner has said in interviews, she definitely talks about wanting to tell a story about Sith. Like, she talks about Sith, like, I mean, because we have no confirmation, Bobby, like you said, that in this show, like, for example, that this stranger character, or whatever he is a Sith. But, I mean, she has talked about, like, in interviews, that basically this story is about Sith, and it seems to be pointing in that direction. And it's like, well, how's this going to make sense with the Phantom Menace if indeed the Jedi seem to think that the Sith haven't been around for a very, very long time, but then we're going to pop back 100 years and apparently there's like a group of Jedi, like we see in this episode, fighting a guy with a red lightsaber.
You'd think the Disney research people would be like, whoa, 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 let's try to keep this in canon, guys.
But for the showrunner and the writers to specifically choose that Jedi to be in this episode, it makes me think that there's going to be some way that they explain that. I mean, to me, it would be one thing to just kind of ignore it and just bounce around it. But to specifically pick that guy, it makes me think that this isn't just going to be a really bad situation where they completely ignore it. Then why pick him? You know what I mean? Am I making sense, Bobby or Michelle? Or
I was gonna say, like, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. Like, I hope that it all makes sense, but I also coming from a side that I acknowledge they have 30-minute episodes. There's only 4 more episodes left, and they don't seem to be beholden to any major canon lately. Not that I'm angry at some of it. Some of it I'm kind of annoyed by, but some of it I'm kind of like, yeah, it's fine. They could just be like, huh, well, tough patooties, David Lott. You're not going to get the answers that you're seeking.
Bobby, any thoughts on it?
Hmm. Yeah, it's weird to me that there's people who live and breathe Star Wars like it's a cult, and it's this is their religion, and they know so much, and they feel like the opposite of you, David. They feel like, oh, they've messed up. Here's another example of why Star Wars is going down the drain because they're just ignoring canon and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, so there's people online saying that, for one, Kiadi Mundi wasn't even born yet, eh, based on what they know, and so he shouldn't even be in the episode, let alone whatever he's saying. So there's that one aspect of it that I'm like, okay, that does seem weird. So all I did was look a little further into where people were getting that information as to why uh, and when he would have been born. And it says Wikipedia, and then it says, like, you follow the link down the thing, Wikipedia, this race or whatever, and then it says legends. And I'm like,
Boom.
okay, well,
It's
that's your
legends.
answer. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's legends, which means it's
It's
not
not canon
canon.
anymore.
And
Right.
Pablo Hidalgo, yeah, Pablo Hidalgo and Dave Filoni. And Pablo Hidalgo, for anyone who doesn't know, he's one of the people in the Star Wars story group. And Dave Filoni have both said that pretty much the canon of the show that you can 100% count on is the live action stuff, the movies, basically. And at this point now, it would probably be the series, the shows, and then animation, and kind of the books that can be
Right. They
changed
seem to still kind
at the
of
whim of,
toy with what happens in the books. Yeah.
yeah,
They are
yeah.
very particular
And
about which
so
books are technically in there.
the way they do it is, if they decide to pull something from one of these books that are canon, they reserve the right to change certain elements of it. And
Right.
so that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what they do for the live action. But live action is pretty much the foundation of what's what. And in no live action have they ever said when Kiadi Mundi was born.
Right.
So there you go. Your legends, throw it out the window because that doesn't count. And that's according to the people who would know. And the other element of that is, again, Pablo knows his Star Wars, and he's part of the story group. Dave Filoni knows his Star Wars, and he's part of the story group, and has that newer position at Lucasfilm and all that stuff.
Right.
So you mean to tell me that both of them watched this episode knowing that that was Kiadi Mundi, and didn't say, you know what, Leslie, we have something that's wrong here, because he did say in the Phantom Menace that there has not been another Sith for a millennia. So, seen in a millennia. So, you're saying that both those guys were very, very knowledgeable, and most people who've just seen the movies are knowledgeable of that fact. So, you mean to tell me that they missed that? I doubt it. So to me, that says
Right.
that there's a reason why that character's in there, and that will be explained. And it feels like everyone wants the answers now. And you can tell by the way this show is set up that everything isn't what it seems. Some of these answers will be forthcoming, and you may not like the answers, but not everything is being done by mistake or by negligence or bad writing. It's like, well, let's see the full story first, and then throw stones at it
Right.
where it needs to be thrown. We don't know everything yet, so there may be a bit of a, what is that storytelling aspect called, Rashomon, where you kind of tell it from the same story from different points of view. And so that could be something that we see as well, as seeing like something that happened from May's point of view that we didn't see, or something that happened from the Jedi's point of view that we didn't see. Because there's one part of the scene when Master Soul is telling Osha, let's get back to the ship. I'll explain everything to you when we're there.
Yeah.
So there's clearly something that's not being said and told that we don't know as the audience yet. But that's done by design because it's supposed to be something of a mystery, like a true detective in a sense of where these things unfold as the story goes and the episodes go. So to me, there's reasonings behind things, but everyone is so quick to just find a reason to hate and to latch onto it and be like, oh, see, I'm telling you, this is why. And it's like, just chill for a minute. Or how about this for a novel idea? Stop watching. I said it last week. You clearly don't like it. Just disappear it from your mind. Treat it as non-canon. And just go about your life.
Right.
Why keep watching it if it's doing you so much harm and it's bothering you so much?
Right.
You're only adding, again, I said this last week, you're only adding to the numbers that Disney Plus sees in terms of views if you don't like it and you're still watching it.
Exactly.
Keep watching it is not doing you any good. It's not doing you any favors. So
you were supporting the show by watching it.
Correct, sure. Exactly. Like if you want it to change, if you want to have it actually change, then be the actual change. Don't just complain about it because that's not that. It's corporate, right? Like they look at numbers. Yeah. They're not looking at complaints. They're looking at numbers. And so if the numbers are that the viewers are high, then they're not going to change it. They're not going to fix anything.
Yeah, they're clearly not looking at complaints because we are getting a Rey movie in a couple of years. Right. And if they were looking at complaints, we wouldn't get that. They were looking at numbers because the movies made money. So,
right.
Welcome to the Fortune 100. We look at numbers. Numbers talk. This is how it goes. So I kind of remembered what I was going to talk about, and I don't want to get too much into it, but basically it was what Bobby was saying about, like, you know, in Star Wars, people can change from bad to good. And I'll be honest, before I watched the third episode, the theory that I had was that Osha's the Jedi one.
Yeah.
Okay.
The good sister so far.
The good sister. That the other one. So this is how much I don't care about the show. May. Yeah. My theory in my head before the third episode was that they've actually been flip-flopped, and that May, who is coming across as the bad guy, is actually in the end realistically the good guy, and that it's kind of flip-floppy, but you don't really know that. And that obviously, like, May does seem to be slightly the more powerful of the two as a whole. But that Osha was more interested in the Jedi in general, as we saw in episode 3. And honestly, it could still flip at this point. Like, Osha could flip to the darker side, and then May could flip to the lighter side. I don't know what the catalyst could be for that. Or maybe what it is like Osha winds up dying and then May winds up flipping to the good side because Osha was killed by, you know, this mentor, this stranger that she has, you know. So I don't know. I kind of feel like I felt like that was kind of an obvious character story arc from the beginning, is that they could easily flip-flop, you know, light and dark, dark and light, and good and bad and whatnot. And yeah, if anything, I'm kind of curious to see exactly how they're going to play that out. I think that's kind of what has me continued watching at this point, is I want to see if my assumptions on this are going to play out.
So you're saying you think there's a possibility they've already, like, swapped at some point, or that they will in the future?
My theory before the third episode was that they had swapped at some point.
Already?
They had already swapped, yeah.
Okay.
That was the theory that I was going on before the third episode, and then the third episode happened, and now I'm not too sure. It could be that they switched still. I don't know. And that's that's what has me
And you mean
continuing
like
to
a
watch.
literal swap between the two
Like
of
the
them?
names, like
May
the
is
one
Osha
was
and Osha is May.
right.
Kind of
Like
thing.
the one watched the one die and went, well, I'm going to take her name from now on, and I'm going to pretend to be her, and then that's what actually happened.
I guess the only reason I wouldn't, based on what we know so far, I don't think that's the case, is based on the fact that Osha went with the Jedi, and
Right.
I,
Again, the third
May-
episode kind
May
of
didn't
threw
want to.
the
Right.
kind of third episode kind of threw that into a loophole, but you never know. Like she could have been like she could have just pretended to be the other twin.
right.
Because like Bobby was just saying, like it does seem like there's still more information that we haven't been told about that whole situation going down.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like that, I feel like it's sad that's why I want to be like, am I right? Am I wrong? Like, that's
I
why
would say
I'm watching the shows and like find out if I'm correct.
I
or
would give
not.
my prediction that I don't think that's the case, but it would be if that were the case, it would make the fact that they used two different child actresses for the twins interesting. If indeed at some point they like swapped, since those are two different kids and it was kind of obvious who was who, but anyway,
I don't disagree.
Oh, I'm not trying to poo-poo on your idea. I'm just talking it out. Like, yeah.
I don't disagree. I don't
Saying,
know.
it's an interesting idea.
But I also could see them just changing sides because of,
Yeah.
the goodness in the world.
I was going to say, like, in the idea
Universe.
that, like, I definitely don't believe that one, like, May in this episode is now just like, okay, I'm giving this up, even though that's kind of the conversation she has with Chimere at one point.
Yeah, I think she's playing a long game there.
But at the same time, if she were from here on out to kind of still be sticking to that line of, no, I don't want to follow this master anymore, then it would seem to me that Osha would then, for whatever reason that we haven't seen yet, obviously, might then become this, an acolyte to this master. Because the show's called The Acolyte. I can't believe that May is just like already in episode 4 gone, well, I'm not going to be an acolyte anymore. And then we don't have an acolyte for 4 more episodes. Like,
Right.
That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but
Right.
what do I know?
Right. They're either going to switch because, like, I think basically, who's the one that's the acolyte currently?
May.
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 So, like, May dies, and Osha gets really enraged by it, and then she becomes the acolyte, right? So that could happen. Or Osha dies, but then it's actually the other way, and then May does actually go. But I think right now, the current thing that's happening off of this episode, my theory in this episode is that May's playing the long game, and she's kind of pretending like that she's changed her mind. I don't think, based on how quickly she changed her mind, it doesn't make sense. But then again, there's a couple other things that'll make sense to me.
Yeah.
So maybe she did actually change her mind. But I don't quite buy into it.
Right.
Again, there's a lot of issues. So many issues.
And I mean, I know we're kind of over time, but one last quick thing, unless you guys have anything else, but I wanted to bring up real quick. I mean, the big theory, and I think it's not just like an odd theory. I mean, it seems super obvious, almost maybe too obvious, that Chimere is this, Sith or whatever he is. And there's a part of me that's like, it's almost too obvious that maybe he's not, because the show seems to really be pointing toward that. But then, I mean, I have a hard time believing that this is not Chimere, and I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts on that. Bobby, did you have any thoughts? Or
I never thought too much about it other than when I listened to different podcasts or watched reactions, their thoughts on stuff. And just because I hate trying to solve something beforehand, and so I just kind of will let it play out for itself. And so for me, it was not a thought, but it was in the back of my mind because I'd heard other people mention it, that's got to be the guy. Since episode 2, they were saying, hey, this is probably who that entity is, that being. And then other people have speculated that it's the mother that
I've
we
heard that
didn't
as
see
well.
dead on the planet. So I'm like, yeah, it could be either one of those two. And to me, it would make sense in terms of like how they're keeping it. And if it's the mother, then I would hope that she's not a Sith and considered a Sith. If it's that guy, Chimere, then I would hope that maybe it's something else going on there in terms of him being a Sith, and that yeah, there could be he has a master, and
Right.
then it's like, well, he's trying to recruit her to take overthrow his master, same way that Darth Vader tried to recruit Luke to
Mhm.
overthrow the Emperor so that they could be the two. And so it could be something similar to that as well if it is him. But yeah, I didn't have any of my own thoughts other than sometimes seeing what other people were saying and be like, okay, I could see how that could be either one of those two scenarios.
Michelle, any thoughts on that? Or?
I guess I hadn't really thought about it. I guess I was just kind of letting the whole like who the stranger is kind of play out in a way. But I could see it being Chimera, but I could see it being the mother, but I could see it being the birth mother because she seemed to be more.
Right. The birth
Right.
mother.
That's what I think Bobby's referring to. as the
Yeah,
grandmother.
I think she was more. I don't know, hardened in a way
Oh yeah.
from what we saw. And so I could see where she's like, I hate all Jedi. Look what happened. The Jedi basically created this rift in my coven with my two children, and my two children wound up destroying my coven, and this is what's happening. And she's just a ridiculously powerful witch.
Right.
So, but also I'm kind of like, nah, I'll just see how it plays out. I don't know. The Acolyte has me. I don't know.
I mean, because I heard that theory. I think after episode like 2 or something, and I was like, yeah, maybe. But and then after this episode, for me, it seemed to be like, oh wow, yeah, no, it really seems like it's him. At least that's how it seems to me. Like even just the size of him, like when he walk, you know, when he appears and is standing next to Osha, and I'm like, his stature and everything just looks like
He's just putting on an act that he can't get out of this little like ankle thing dangling him
Right.
from the
yeah,
tree.
like, and that's the other thing too. He seems to be going out of his way when he's not, when he's Chimere, like he's like kind of fumbling around at times and really putting on a show,
right.
like for May and such. That it seems to me that that's the case. I've heard the theories too about the one mother possibly being in. I don't really buy into that. I mean, anything's possible, but for some reason that just doesn't. I really don't think that's the case. But and I just don't think that would be as interesting for me if it were her. I don't know why, but I just don't. So I was just curious if you guys thought about that at all. Yeah, we've gone on a bit long, but any last bits? I don't want to, keep you guys from sharing anything that you want to share. Anything else?
Only thing I'll say is that I am looking forward to the back four episodes of this series, just because, if for no other reason, the fact that the critics at most had the first 4 episodes, so even they don't know what's coming next, and
True.
so
Right.
there's a little bit of air of everybody being on the same page when it comes to episode 5. So I'm curious to see what they felt like that was a good stopping point to show everyone, and then what we're going to get with episode 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, now we're on level ground again. So
Right.
yeah.
I'm with you. I mean, yeah, I didn't love this episode, but of course, I'm still curious to see what happens and how this plays out. And I'm to be clear, I'm not going to do what I'm about to say, but with the way this show has been developed with these short episodes, if there were a show that I were going to just wait and then binge at the end, this might be it. But am I going to be able to wait and binge it? No. I mean, of course, I'm going to watch them week by week, but if maybe if it weren't for our podcast, I would consider doing it that way. But let's be real, it's not going to happen.